What if I told you that we could turn wood into gasoline that works with existing cars? What if I said not only can we turn wood into gasoline, but we can do it using the most readily available and abundant forest materials to produce a non-ethanol gasoline that is chemically identical to what you're using in your car today? In the current system, when you buy a gallon of gasoline, that money is leaving your community, and the fuel is releasing fossil carbon into the atmosphere, all because it's based on a barrel of crude oil that's sold on volatile international markets. In the Woodland biosystem, instead of sending your money to foreign extractors and refiners, that money would stay within your community, going to support up to 100 jobs per site, as well as local businesses and landowners who can recirculate that money back into your local economy. We've worked closely with organizations like Cornell University and the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture to make sure we can secure our feedstock in a way that enhances forest health and sustainability by using the locally available and abundant resources that we have in the Pennsylvania wilds. Woodland Bio will create carbon neutral pathways for transportation fuels. We're designing the first system for Tioga County, Pennsylvania. So the first facility is designed to take in around 600 dry tons per day of woody biomass and convert that into 42,000 gallons per day of gasoline, as well as renewable electricity and biochar co-products. This represents roughly 2% of Pennsylvania's demand for gasoline that can be addressed from this one facility. And we don't stop there. The same design that we're building for Tioga County is made to be duplicated. So we can take that exact same design that we're building in Tioga County and we can copy and paste it across the state, the nation, and hopefully eventually even the world to increase access to low carbon fuels. Woodland Bio will have the added advantage of being 5 to 10 cents cheaper than traditional gasoline, and we are already in conversation with retailers to distribute that product. These systems are not limited to working with woody biomass. So what's on the screen right now is a breakdown of all the different types of biomass that can eventually be used as a feedstock for one of these systems. The graphic is organized clockwise in terms of difficulty. So at 1 o'clock, woody biomass is the simplest, most straightforward material to work with. Once we've developed the wood-based system, we can start to work our way clockwise around this graphic to use other feedstocks such as agricultural residuals, then animal waste, and so on around the entire graphic. Go ahead, next one. We've assembled a core team that will help us address all the major aspects of the project. As a founder, I did a lot of the initial research in college, where I did a year of independent study into biomass to fuel systems. That was then followed by a career in marketing and business development. Rich Bohr, my co-founder, comes from a long background in the energy and utility industry, and he has a mechanical engineering degree from RIT. Matt DeFazzi on finance is a certified CPA and an experienced CFO who's worked for a variety of businesses in both manufacturing and energy, including several years working for Corning Incorporated. Between all the team members then, we assembled our core conceptual model. This model allows us to test the financial and engineering performance of the system in a variety of different situations. That model is what produced our revenue projections, which show that the first facility at full capacity at a $3 per gallon price point would generate an estimated $74 million in annual revenue between all of our revenue streams, which are broken out on this chart. Woodland Bio's unique process efficiency and localized logistics will lead to better profitability than traditional fossil gasoline. We've already built a large network of supporters, both from local elected officials and state-level agencies. We have signed letters of support from State Senator Gene Yaw, as well as Pennsylvania State Forester Seth Cassell, and all 3 Tioga County commissioners. Just to mention a few of them, we actually have a lot more than that in the bank. We also have the support of the forest products industry, as represented by the other logos on screen now, because they recognize the immense need to create markets for low-grade forest residuals. And that's why they're big supporters of the project. Woodland Bio is now looking for investors to come in and help us through the next phases of engineering. And this is kind of where I'm going to break from my typical presentation where we get into financing to address kind of the problem that we want to bring to the table today and that we want to get feedback from the community on. And that's the seed problem. And this is a problem for all startups, of course. Everybody recognizes it's tough to find seed money. It's particularly an issue when you're dealing with emerging technology that's in the phase that we're in. And that phase is the stage between pilot, where you're doing your small scale proof of concepts, and commercialization. It is one of the most difficult steps you can take as any business, and it's a step I recognize was an issue all the way back in college, when I was hearing about all these fantastic different technologies that were going to solve our climate issues, but they weren't making it to market. You'd hear about them in research phases, they do their pilot trials, and then you'd never see them hit the market. So in college, what I recognized all the way back then, and I wish I hadn't because it's brought me an endless amount of grief, is that we need a company that specializes in commercialization, that's taking the pilot technology that's being proven out and implementing that in a meaningful commercial scale. And it's one of the most difficult steps because when you're doing the research, the risk is high enough that grants will help pay for that research. There are several grants you can get if you're in the early days and you're developing a completely brand new technology. You can get grants that will help cover the cost of developing that technology. However, as soon as you finish the pilot scale facility, those grants are going to stop. Now the grant-giving organizations expect that the private market is going to take that project and run with it. The problem is that that doesn't happen. Because for the private market, you're still commercializing a new technology. Sure, you have a pilot facility, that's good, but you haven't done this at a commercial scale yet. So for the private industry, the risk is still a little bit too high for a first of its kind commercial scale operation. And that's where there's a lot of slowdown in the industry overall for emerging sustainable technologies, is moving from that pilot scale to the commercial scale. And that's really where we're looking for input from the Pennsylvania community, because in many ways, this is a particular problem more so here than it is in other parts of the country like California or Texas. Because in California, they have an infrastructure set up for these high risk, high reward type of investments, and you will find investors there who will take this on. In Texas, they have more money than God, so they'll throw money at anything, and it's pretty easy. In Pennsylvania, we don't have either thing. The infrastructure for this kind of emerging technology is not necessarily there yet. We have a great partner in the Ben Franklin Technology Group, and we are working with the Ben Franklin Technology Group, and thank God they exist because they're one of the few resources right now that's really trying to address this gap between pilot and commercialization, but we need more. We need more from the community to address this gap. It's one of the most difficult gaps to cross, and we need everyone in Pennsylvania to kind of come in and help us overcome this development gap to get the project to where it needs to be. So that's kind of where, I'd like to open up the floor. I'd love to hear more questions. I was given 10 minutes today, so I won't get into too much detail about the exact financing requirements, but I can if the question comes up. But in essence, yes, we need help getting from pilot to commercialization, and that's really what we're focused on doing at Woodland Bio. So thank you very much for the time, and looking forward to hearing questions.
Has there been any concept testing or conformity assessment done on a product, and if so, is it accessible for the public, or how will we be able to get access to it?
At Woodland Bio, I'm not a scientist and I didn't develop the technology we're using. We're using existing technology partners who have pilot facilities. So those pilot facilities aren't accessible to the public, but if their investor was interested, we could organize to have that pilot facility toured by a potential investor. But those are not owned by our company. They're owned by our partner technology companies who have one pilot facility in New Jersey and another pilot facility in North Carolina.
Say you get to the commercial phase. I can't speak to that part, but do you have a plan to retain your company's resiliency and the technology's resiliency when big oil tries to crush you by dropping their prices and burning profit to keep market share?
Right now, they're all running in circles about electric vehicles and what are they going to do down the road. We're providing you a path to say that you can keep your gas station open and here's a new product for you to sell. So we really view ourselves as a partner to that industry where we're coming in and we're providing you a long-term solution to remain relevant with minimal changes to your operation. So we really see that, yeah, we should be on the same page with that industry. We're providing them what they need to remain, to fit into a sustainable future, essentially.
Are you licensing multiple components and then you're building, let's say, the unique IP that investors would be funding if they invest in you at the intersection of multiple components, or how does that work?
That's exactly correct. There are three core components that exist in separate industries that we're bringing together to make one system that goes from biomass to gasoline. So the first system right now is used largely for electricity. They turn biomass into electricity by converting it first into a product known as syngas, synthetic natural gas. And so that's traditionally where it's used right now. The secondary process is used right now for converting natural gas into liquid fuels, gasoline in most cases. And so now you're taking those two technologies. First technology goes from wood to gas, and then second technology goes from gas to finished liquid fuel. And so that's really, it's two core technologies with a third kind of cleanup step in between that connects the two that we're trying to do for the first time here on a commercial scale.
Is it kind of benchtop scale, proof of concept on the intersection of those systems? Or what level of demonstration do you have about these systems in combination?
In combination, yeah, no. So a lot of that research has been done at the pilot scale facilities. They've already done tests. So that was what we were doing a lot during phase one, actually, is we were connecting the technology suppliers to each other. So we said, what's coming out of your system? Give us an analysis of that, send it to the second technology supplier who can then replicate that material and run it through their secondary system. So yeah, those two technology suppliers, we connected them to each other. We said, here's what our plan is. Let's do a feasibility study together. And everybody confirmed that the technology can go from one step to the next. Yep.
Last part of the question, and we're done. This is a much quicker one. Can you currently use waste, let's say waste wood chips, waste wood scraps as a feedstock?
That is the primary feedstock. In fact, I'm glad you asked it. So on the sustainability side, yes, we're using low-grade material. Your high-grade material is still going to go to a sawmill. They're going to make all your construction products out of that. Your mid-grade material is still going to go to the paper mill. They're still going to make paper products out of that. It's everything that's left over. All the junk that right now doesn't have a market, doesn't have a home, that's the material we'd be taking in. And that's why we have the support of all the forest products people, is because they need markets for that low-grade material, and they love us for that reason.
Gas, is there a policy mechanism or political will to maybe subsidize the gas or reduce the gas tax as it stands for this fuel specifically?
I won't say yes. We're in conversations at the state level with a couple different agencies about whether we can reduce the tax for our gas versus fossil fuels. Yeah.
Could this also be used as sustainable aviation fuel, or is that a whole different kind of product?
That's a different output. Down the road, I would say, so this system's designed to make gasoline. The system we're building in Tioga County will only ever make gasoline. However, future systems, when we copy that system and we build number 3 or 4 or 5, we could design that system to be an aviation fuel system. Yes. So down the road, that is a possibility. But right now, we need to start with gasoline because that's what we can do today with the technology. The diesel and aviation fuel variants need to be developed, and we need to use the money from the gasoline system to develop diesel and then aviation after that.
What IP do you bring to the equation to keep competitors from using those same 3 to come into business against you? And how are you protecting your IP?
Right now, it's just a company secret. And that's really the best mechanism we have right now. We are going to look as we get further into the process and we raise financing. Part of that financing is to do an evaluation of whether we can patent the process, the way that we've connected all 3 technologies, if there's a possibility for patenting that. Otherwise, it is just a matter of exclusivity agreements, partnerships, and trying to essentially protect, at least regionally is what we're looking at. At the very least, protecting it within the Northeast, because we're not alone. There are people developing these projects, lots of them in California, lots of them in Nevada too, a fair amount in Europe as well. So we're not alone in developing these projects. We have no illusions that there's going to be competitors out there to us. If we can just lock down the Northeast, that's a good start. That's where the wood basket is, and then going into Canada as well, another major wood basket. So our best option is A, company secret, and B, through these partnership agreements that we have with the technology suppliers.
There are windows you have to be aware of for IP protection. You may want to, just as there are 2 of us here representing Penn State launch boxes.
Yeah.
Penn State has an IP clinic that you can get free IP work done. That you should get involved in early so that you can find out if you're close to a window closing on you, as some entrepreneurs find out the hard way.
Right.
Yeah. So you definitely want to check into that, because if it is something that's patentable and you're too late, that's a big problem. Yeah. Secondly, what size are what is your plan for facility size and the amount of processing that can happen on site? And is there an ideal that you would hope to aim for that could be co-located with some user of energy?
Yeah, the scale we have right now, 600 dry tons to 42,000 gallons, that's one production train. That will never change. Those systems are optimized to work with each other at the right scale. So if we ever wanted to scale up, all we're doing is we're building 2 of them right next to each other, or 3 of them, or 4 of them. So it's that modular approach. And that way we can also explore the market. We can figure out what can the local, because we're trying to supply this thing within a 50 to 100 mile radius. So what can we realistically feed it with from a 50, 100 mile radius, and how many trains can that feed? And that's where you'd basically build out new systems just as multiples of this system that we've designed in Tioga County.
Where are you with your funding, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
And have you gotten an SBIR grant?
No, we don't qualify for an SBIR because we're too far down the process for an SBIR. Yes, that's part of the headache I'm talking about, exactly. If you could switch 2 slides forward. So this is the engineering work we have to do. We didn't invent this process. This is a standardized process. If you want to build a new manufacturing facility, this is the process you go through. It used to be a 2-stage process called FEED. That was broken up into pre-feed and then feed work. Nowadays, they've broken it up into 3 steps because that helps to reduce the risk a little bit. And now it's called FEL, stages 1, 2, and 3. We've completed stage 1. That's feasibility. We secured our equipment suppliers, our partnerships. We went out and secured our feedstock. We know where our material is going to come from. And we identified a property and made an agreement with the landowner to hold that property for us. And he's going to actually invest that property in exchange for equity once we complete engineering. So we secured all those things, then we built out our conceptual model that I mentioned earlier. That's all completed phase 1. Our next round is phase 2 validation. That's $250,000 that we need immediately. And that is to basically hand the conceptual model that we built over to what's called an EPC firm, engineering, procurement, and construction firm. They would validate all of that work that we've done to their standard, and then they would use that information to go out and do a site characterization where they make sure our site meets all the detailed needs of the project. And that huge portion of that is a traffic study, because we're talking about 50 to 60 trucks per day that need to come in and out of the facility. So a huge portion is making sure we can do that kind of traffic safely. And all of that, we finish that all with pre-permitting in hand. Then we need to go and raise $2.25 million to actually complete the rest of engineering. That's where they do a fully engineered design and construction drawings for the property that we've identified. And that's all what we need. And then we also build community support. All 3 of those are needed then to finish our final permits in hand, property in hand. We're ready to break ground and start construction. Construction is around $250 million. So that's a whole nother raise after that. But the fact of the matter is, when you get to the $250 million raise, those investors are investing in assets. You're spending that $250 million on equipment, on land, on buildings. So if the whole project goes up, then at least there's assets underlying that investment, which is why actually this $2.5 million is much harder to raise, because there's no assets backing this up. This is pure, we need to do engineering work and finish designs to move the project to that the final construction financing.
That's basically the same kind of general feedback I was going to give. Yeah, corporate venture capital or CVC arms of oil and gas, other like large energy companies. I do think it would be more appropriate for the following stage after this, where that would come to play. But it's never too early to kind of have those conversations. If you can get the connector, even though they're going to tell you it's too early, come back to us after you've done this phase 3 execution. It's probably the right time to, it's never too soon.
Oh no, we do have those conversations ongoing, but they've told us that, we know that because they've told it to us. They've said, we don't invest under 100 million, come back to us when you're ready for the big raise, and that's when we'd get involved. So we have like 3 or 4 of those potential investors like on the line who have said, come back to us once you've done engineering and we'll give you the hundreds of millions. But it's this part that they don't do a $250,000 raise. They're shell. They don't bother with that little money. That's like, chump change for them. So yeah, that's really been the difficulty, is this phase actually. Again, we have good amount of investors lined up for that later portion.
I noticed you're live on WeFunder right now.
We are. We're actually in the process of switching to a C Corp investment strategy. So we're not sure. We actually might be dropping WeFunder soon. We've run into some questions with the platform and how it's run. So that's where we're actually moving to a private platform. And that's where I didn't bring it up, actually. I was just, we're in the process. Yeah. But no, we are in the process of converting, of setting up the C Corp offering, essentially. And so that's where we're looking for investors, more traditional kind of private investment avenue than what WeFunder was offering. If anybody's interested, so come and talk to me, of course, after we're done today. I have our materials here on the table. You're welcome to grab. We have rack cards, business cards, one sheet summaries. Feel free to grab any of our materials. happy to talk to anybody, in person after this or after the meeting today or later down the road as well. So yeah, really appreciate any input or thoughts on how we can overcome this $250,000 hurdle right here. So thank you very much for your time, everybody. If there are no other questions, and excellent.